Okay, so we're going to have a quick lesson on how to answer different questions in your English HSC paper. So the first thing to understand that it is your job during the HSC English paper to reshape and redefine the question you are given in terms of the argument that you are going to make. In an ideal world, you know every quote from every book that you read for your HSC, but that's slightly unrealistic, if not very unrealistic. So we all know that you're going in there with a set number of quotes and examples that you've remembered in your mind, and that you need to use those to answer a question. So we need to have a manner, a way of being able to do so successfully and making sure that you are answering the question and not just either regurgitating the words or not addressing it at all. So we're going to go over some steps today. So the steps when you are given a question should really be as follows. The first thing you should do, obviously, is read the question. That would make sense. Make sure you read the whole question, not just the quote if there is one, but what comes after it, and vice versa. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to identify what is being asked of you. So what exactly has been dictated by the question, which we'll go back to in a second. The third thing you're going to do is you're going to consider the argument that you have in your mind already and your quotes, which will set the parameters of what you can and can't do. 4, you're going to do some close association brainstorming, which I'll show you how to do in a second. And then you're going to adapt and define, which is effectively answer the question. So these are the steps you need to follow very quickly as soon as you are aware of what your question is. So as soon as reading time commences, you need to begin this particular process. So we're going to skip over reading today. Obviously, I'm sure you can do that. And we're going to first of all look at identify what is being asked. Now, what you are being asked. Being given a question in English can dictate any number of things. It can ask you, or dictate, what type of language you are to use. It can even dictate what types of techniques you need to talk about. It could dictate the structure of your answer. It can dictate what the impact is on you. And probably most common, it can dictate the ideas that you're going to speak about. So let's figure out what each of those means. So language. If it's dictating language, the language you need to use, then it's probably going to come in the verb that it's being used. So for example, they might say assess. They might tell you to evaluate. They might ask you to discuss, and so on and so forth. And that will determine what type of language you need to use. So if you haven't already used evaluative language and they ask you to evaluate, you need to embed that in your answer. Another thing that can dictate the language, and which is assessed by the last marking point, which is language appropriate to audience, purpose and form, is if they give you a different text type other than an essay. So for example, if they ask for a speech, if they ask for a discursive, they ask for an article or an interview. It hasn't happened in a very long time, but they're well within their rights to do so. And therefore, you need to be able to shape your language to fit that particular stipulation of the question. The next thing that they might ask you, or dictate to you, is the structure. So generally, if you get a compare question, you might need to change your structure. If you are given some other structural response, it may be persuasive or discursive. Also, if they give you a different text type, that might alter the structure. But fundamentally, it doesn't really matter which structure you are given, you still need the same information. You still need your techniques and your examples in it. Something else they might ask you or dictate is the techniques. they dictate techniques to you, they tend to be broader techniques. Things like narrative voice, maybe something to do with genre, characters, even down to say contrast. We're yet to see a question which gives you a minute or a micro technique such as metaphor. It seems unlikely that you're going to be asked to do that because that would limit your argument immensely. Another thing that they might dictate is the impact. So this is where the question says something about that it has heightened your understanding or enhanced your awareness or challenged your assumptions or perhaps affirmed. All these types of terms which refer to what happens to you because you have engaged with that text. And then, as I said before, the most common one is that you'll get an ideas-based question, and at a basic level, those are themes. So, generally speaking, we're very comfortable or aware of the ideas-based questions, and even if we're not sure of it in terms of being conscious of it, the impact question is also something that you're given quite often. So, if you consider that this is what you might possibly be asked, it then stands to reason, and if you have the opportunity to be aware even further what could possibly be asked by these things, then you should be. So if you go to your rubrics for English, you can actually, for each module, come to an understanding of what the possible options are, or the parameters that they were most likely to set for these particular ideas. So we will go over that when we do a practice question. I will show you how you find this from your rubric. So that is identifying what's being asked of you. The next thing is that you need to consider your argument, but you do that later. And then we do what we call a close association brainstorming, meaning that I'm going to brainstorm the ideas that can possibly come from the questions I have been given, but I'm only going to do it within the parameters of my study. So let's look at a practice question to work on this one. So let's say, for example, you're doing your common module. And the question is, how has the study of your text revealed the role emotion plays in one's experiences? Now, I know that my common module is asking me about texts and human experiences. I know that I can talk about collective and individual experiences, that I can talk about emotion and human qualities. I can talk about anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in behaviours and motivations, and that I can speak about storytelling, all of which come from the rubric that they gave you, which set the parameters of your study. So when I look at this particular question and I have identify the idea that they are asking me, then I know that I want to use those particular ideas in order to set the parameters of my own answer. I have a look and I see, have they asked me anything else? Have they asked me anything about language? How has the study of your text? Not really. Have they stipulated a technique? No. Have they said anything about my structure? No. And have they said anything about impact? Well, technically speaking, how has your study of your text revealed is partially the impact, but there's nothing unusual, nothing abnormal that I need to be able to fit in. So, I look at my topic sentences, and now is my job to try and do a bit of close association brainstorming. So I brainstorm according to what I already know I would like to argue. So I would like to argue that individuals can be confronted by experiences which provoke the need for self-reflection, and that in the face of uncomfortable experiences, human behaviour can be seen to be contradictory as individuals wallow in the negative repercussions rather than seek a resolution. So I go over to emotions. I can now think about my emotions, or I can think about others. I can talk about it in terms of human nature. I can talk about positive ones. I can talk about negative ones. I can discuss that they are overpowering. I can discuss that they're weak. I can discuss that they are natural. I could even talk about them being false. There are so many ways that I can adapt this particular idea of emotion. When you look at the words you're given, think about the fact that words generally can have a verb, a noun, an adjective. They have different forms, they have different connotations, they have different uses, and it's up to you to adapt to fit that. So whichever one works best for you. And then I say plays in one's experiences. Now I look at depending on the text that I've studied, will determine the experiences that I'm going to speak about. So I don't really need to do too much with that so long as I've written an essay that is actually about these experiences. So let's have a look now at what we can do. Once we've done this close association brainstorming, I get to adapt. So is there a cause and effect here? I should look at this. Is it saying that one thing happened that causes the other? Not really. Just says emotion plays a role in the experiences. So in actual fact, I should have done something with role as well. And with role, I say, well, what can I say about role? I can say, is it a powerful role? Is it determined by others maybe? Is it something that I can transform or change? Do I allow it to happen? Am I resentful of it? Lots of different options for this role. And it's up to me to describe it as I wish. So now I need to alter these. So individuals can be confronted by experiences which provoke the need for self-reflection. First thing, I say, well, have I got anything here which is just a synonym for emotion? Not really. I do have self-reflection. So one option could be individuals can be confronted by experiences which provoke the need for emotional self-reflection, so long as I can actually prove that. That's one option for a possible answer. Another option, let's have a look. Maybe we can be confronted by emotional experiences which provoke the need for self-reflection. If I want to be even more complicated, so that's another option. Let's see if I can get something a little more sophisticated though, rather than just simply adding in a word. So individuals can be confronted by experiences which provoke the need for self-reflection as they become aware that emotion has overcome logic. Now that, if I had evidence to prove it, would be a more sophisticated way of answering the question. So let's try again for down here. Where is it? Sorry. In the face of uncomfortable experiences, human behaviour can be seen to be contradictory, as individuals wallow in the negative repercussions rather than seek a resolution. Now I've actually got lucky here because this word, wallow, generally refers to feeling or allowing yourself to rest in negative emotions. So I can actually say, in the face of uncomfortable experience, human behaviour can be seen to be contradictory as individuals are consumed by maybe grief or sadness and wallow. And you could change that emotion to be anything that you feel fit the argument you were making. So sometimes you will find, once you do your associations, or you just read your own response, that you barely need to change your argument. That's if you get lucky. But for the most part, you have options. If you really don't understand things and you just need to get a move on, you can do a simple answer to the question. If you have that time to think about it and you're comfortable with the question and you're comfortable with your ideas, then you can think of a more sophisticated response, so long as you prove it in your argument. Okay, so we're going to have a consideration of how to do each of these steps now. One with an advanced question and then one with a standard question. Okay, so let's think about our advanced module A, which is a comparative study of text and context, or it's not called that anymore, it's called textual conversation, sorry, but it is essentially a comparison of two texts. So when I think about what they can ask me, my ideas, my structure, my language, my impact, and my techniques, I get to my question and I say, how has your comparative study heightened your awareness of the power of doubt? Now, if I've studied really well, I know that my module dictates certain things to me. So the language that I must use is dictated by the fact that it's a comparative study. The structure is also dictated by the fact that it's comparative. You can choose to write either synthesized or, to be fair, a non-synthesized essay, but there must be comparison. The techniques are not specifically dictated by the rubric, so that comes down to me and the text type that I have. So if I've got poetry, then I'm obviously doing poetic techniques, so on and so forth. I do, however, need to make sure that I can address form and structure. The impact is dictated by the rubric, and it does say that you need to come to understand the role of context, come to understand the dissonances and resonances between the texts, and so on and so forth as you read your rubric. And then the ideas, just so long as that they are the similar idea in each text, that you're not doing completely disparate ideas in each. So because I know this, that when I look at my question, if I have written my essay structured around these ideas, then I will have addressed most of the elements of a question without too much of a problem. So, for example, my question says, how's your comparative study? So immediately, if I have done the right thing, I have a comparative study essay. So this is ticked off and this is ticked off. Heightened your awareness. So that is to do with audience or your impact, right? So if, again, you have an essay which looks at a heightened awareness as because of an act of comparison, then that should be ticked off as well. Then they gave me a theme. The power of doubt, the ideas. So again, what I now have to do, because unless I'm very fortunate, this won't be in my essay, I need to now do my close association brainstorming to see how I can reshape that term to not just be a blanket noun. So when I come to doubt, I can think maybe it is doubting others. Maybe I'm talking about self-doubt. Maybe I'm talking about doubt of the future. Maybe I'm talking about it in terms of self-reflection. Maybe I can talk about it as in challenging egotistical nature. Maybe I can talk about doubt as, or the power of it, as being transformative. Maybe it's actually doubt about the truth. So as I'm thinking of all these things, I'm running through some of the texts in Module A in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, if you've got Plath and Hughes, well, probably going to do something about doubt of the truth. Maybe I could do something about doubt in relationships. Maybe something to do with like doubting own actions. Maybe you can doubt the past. What if I'm thinking about Richard and Richard? I'm like, well, maybe this is about not enough doubt. So something to do with like you need to doubt people and their motivations, because you might need to doubt Richard. Hagseed and the Tempest. Maybe again that could be about needing to have some doubt, and therefore you're not being duped because you actually doubt other people, and so on and so forth. So you can come up with so many answers, but it needs to be filtered through your text and what you were thinking about. And then you can go and adapt your arguments. So let's try with a standard text, Module B. For standard, so this is your closed study of text. Let's say it says, now more than ever, we need a diversity of voices demanding that we listen. Assess how your composer has created unique insights into the challenges individuals face as they struggle to thrive. Okay, so again, I have my rubric. Now, with language with the rubric, they haven't told you to compare. There's only one text, but there is a lot about assessing, evaluating, and passing some judgment on this text. In particular, the text's distinctive features, which we'll come back to. So structure, not covered. So we don't need to worry too much about that. Techniques. Now, because it says you need to consider the distinctive features, it stands to reason then that you should be pretty well aware of the distinctive features of the text that you are studying. So if it's Haddon's Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, think about the narrative voice and the structure and the different text types within the text. If it's Peter Weir's Truman Show, then think about the layering of the different worlds, the creation of the false world, so on and so forth, or characterization. Think about the things that make these texts stick out and be a little different to your usual text that you just read on a weekend. Your impact, covered off in the rubric, in terms of just what you have learnt, what it affirms, what it challenges, so on and so forth. I won't go through them. And then obviously your ideas. Now your ideas are not stipulated in the rubric, so that one comes down to you and what you are trying to argue from your text and its distinctive features. So if, again, I have written my essay around these ideas, I shouldn't find too much of the question too difficult to adapt to. So let's have a look at this question. We have a quote, and then we have the question or statement underneath, which you need to address. You need to make sure you address both of them. You don't have to write the quote in full in your essay, but you do need to define it in your terms. You need to stipulate what is being spoken about. So let's go for the easy things first. Okay, I'll look at assess, and I know that I need to use evaluative language in my essay or response. How your composer has created unique insights. Okay, so we have a disclaimer there. We have unique insights into that. So maybe this is going to be in terms of the techniques that they've used. You might, and the representation is unique, but it also says unique insights. So that would suggest that they want you to talk about what is different. So if you want to be really clever, you would then talk about how this challenges your expectations So what you thought the way the world was is now been changed by engaging with this text. Challenges individuals face as they struggle to thrive. So then I have my idea here. Okay. So depending again on your text, you will think about, well, who is the individual that I'm speaking about? Is it Truman? Is it Christopher? And what challenges do they face? Is it communication? Is it finding truth? Is it finding themselves? Is it in their relationships? Is it to do with like any physical challenges? Is it to do with emotions? Could keep going on. There is plenty to do there. So what are the challenges that face the individual that you're talking about as they struggle to thrive? So as they struggle to, hopefully you understand that thrive means to do more than live. It means to exceed perhaps just normal existence and find a quality of living. So as they struggle to thrive. So this is maybe something to do with the world stopping them. Maybe their differences are problematic. Maybe it's deceit. And then it could be, and that could also be part of the challenges, And then they struggle to thrive. Well, maybe they are in pain. Maybe they don't understand. So on and so forth. I'm not going to keep going. So you can brainstorm as much as possible, this close association, in regards to the text you have studied. But that still leaves us with this quote up here, now more than ever. So I read that and I say, well, now means us. Right? So that's actually the impact here. They're asking you about your world. Okay, so why do we need this? We need a diversity of voices. Diversity meaning difference. These voices are going to have to be characters, right? Or perhaps even the world, depending on the text that you have. So we need characters and worlds that are different, demanding that we listen. And the obvious question is, to what? Now they've given you to what? To the challenges that face individuals as they struggle to thrive. That's what we need to listen to. So then that would say, well, why? Maybe because it creates empathy. Maybe because it challenges our assumptions. Maybe because it forces reflection on our behaviour. To do well in these, you need to try and break up your question as much as possible and be specific about the parts that they have asked you. So in this case, a powerful answer might be that the importance of these texts lies in how they give us unique insights from diverse and challenging voices about how our behaviour and how the behaviour of the masses makes it impossible for those on the outside to thrive in a world that only allows you to live on the inside, or something like that. That's very complicated, but it's breaking down each of the parts and creating as much as a complicated, or sophisticated, not complicated, answer as possible. Then, as we do with the common module, you go and adapt and define. You adapt your thesis, you adapt your topic sentences, and in doing so, you have adapted your argument, and therefore some of your analysis should also adapt, if need be, to fit the question. This does not come on the day. It comes from practice and repeated practice. So as you are studying at this point, you should be reading different questions, breaking it down, read them first, identify what you are being asked, consider your argument, do some close association brainstorming according to your argument and your text, and then adapt and define, and get this down to a very quick and concise process. Good luck.